A very good day to our lovely grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's mathematical literacy lesson. My name is Mampani Kekana, and remember that this lesson is brought to you by Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with the Cyber Discovery Center. Boys and girls, it's that time of the year. We say this is a crunch time. I'm sure you had a short rest, even though I know that most of you did not actually rest. You've been going to your schools and doing revisions and so on. I hope you have also received your script for paper one and paper two so that you could check your mistakes. Okay, remember you're supposed to learn from those mistakes so that you can prepare yourself very well for the final examination. So it's very important that you receive the script and you go through the scripts. You either go through it with your teachers or you go through it by looking at the marking guideline so that you can correct the mistakes that you made in the prelim examination. Now, boys and girls, in today's lesson, we're going to look at some of the concepts or the subtopics that you struggled with in the prelim examination. As we were checking your scripts, we realized that there are certain subtopics that you struggled with, so we only identified. Remember, at this stage, you should be in a position where you can answer any question because your teachers have actually covered everything. So you must be in a position where you should be able to answer any question that comes in your way. So today we're going to look at some of the questions that you struggled with, which includes interest, banking and loans, exchange rates, and inflation. I'm sure most of you or you actually saw this type of questions in the question papers. And then, of course, before we continue with our lesson, we have to look at your pre-knowledge or the pre-assessment. The pre-assessment is we're quickly going to do a recap and check what you know and what you don't know with regard to what we are going to cover today. Okay, the most common questions in the prelim or in the question paper, in any question paper, it's terminologies. Okay, I know that in most question papers, they will have questions where you have to match column A and B. So what is important is you need to know terminologies. You need to know how to define any terminologies. Remember, we are not saying you must memorize those terminologies. Even if you can use your own words, as long as at the end of the day, those words make sense, okay? 3-4 words to form a phrase or a sentence, as long as at the end of the day, that explanation makes sense. Now, let us look at the following. In this case, is match column A and B. So if we have to match column A and B, we're going to look at the definitions that are given or the terminologies that are given on the left-hand side and their explanations. So we have to match the terminologies that are given on the left-hand side column, and we need to match it with their explanations under the column on the right-hand side. So the first one is interest. Okay, so with regard to interest, obviously when you see the word interest, you must have your own way of explaining it. There should be something that comes into your mind when you see the word interest. However, in this case, we have to match the word interest with its relevant explanation. So if I look at the explanations under column B, I can see that I've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, so which explanation under column B matches with the word interest or matches with the word interest? I mean the terminology interest. So interest, if I look at the first one, is it expresses the price of one currency in terms of another. Definitely not this one. A general increase in prices and fall in the purchasing value of money. Definitely not this one. A length or portion of time. Not this one. And then is the cost of borrowing money or the reward for lending it. Is the cost of borrowing money or reward for lending it. So let us check. Maybe this one looks like the correct one, but let us check the rest. The next one is money borrowed that is expected to be paid back with interest. So that is not interest. Refers to the cost or return as a percentage of the amount you are borrowing or saving. Definitely not this one. A bank account that pays interest and is usually not able to be drawn without a notice. Okay, so from all the explanations or the definitions that I've read, you can see that number one, which is interest, actually corresponds with D. So interest, it's D, which is the cost of borrowing money or the reward of lending it. The cost of borrowing money or the reward of lending it. So the next one is interest rate. We have to go through the definition. So this one, D is out because we have already chosen D. We go to the next one. A general increase in prices, not this one. A length or portion of time. Money borrowed that is expected to be paid back with interest, not refers to the cost or return as a percentage of the amount you are borrowing or saving. So interest rate refers to the cost or return as a percentage of the amount you are borrowing or saving. So interest rate goes with F. Remember, this explanation or this terminologies might not be exactly the same as the ones that your teachers taught you, but though you see that they look more or less the same. Right, so interest rate is F, which is the cost or return as a percentage of the amount you are borrowing or saving. The next one is loan. Then we have already chosen F, so F is out. Okay, the next one is loan. What is the definition or the explanation for loan? For loan, it's money borrowed that is expected to be paid back with interest. Okay, that is a loan. Money borrowed that is expected to be paid back with interest. So this one goes with letter E. So number 3 matches with letter E on the right hand side. Exchange rate. Exchange rate, it expresses the price of one currency in terms of another. It expresses the price of one currency in terms of another. So this one will be A. Okay, and then inflation. Inflation is the general increase in prices and fall in the purchasing value of money. So this one is B. Okay, and then we've got number 6, which is a period. It's a length or portion of time. So this one matches with C. So in this case, interest matches with D. Interest rate matches with F. Loan, letter E. Exchange rate, letter A. Inflation, letter B. And then period, letter C. But you can see that under this match column A and B, you are also given an extra definition. That is just to confuse you if you are not sure about your definitions. But if you are sure about your definitions, you will always choose the correct answers. So that is the pre-assessment. This is what you're supposed to know up to so far. Okay, then of course, in this one, the pre-knowledge, we just confirming the terminologies. The interest is the cost of borrowing money or the reward for lending it. And then interest rate refers to the cost or return as a percentage of the amount you are borrowing or saving. And then loan is the money borrowed that is expected to be paid back with interest. Exchange rate expresses the price of one currency in terms of another. Inflation is a general increase in prices and fall in the purchasing value of money. And then the last one, which is a period, a length or portion of time. Okay, some of the basics that you need to know in the subtopics that we are going to discuss today. So you must know how to convert percentages. Okay, conversion of percentages. So we know that if they give you 75%, you know that 75% is the same as 75 over 100. So 75% is the same as 75 over 100, which is equal to 0.75. You must also be able to work with calculations that include ratio, rates, and proportions. Calculations that include ratio, rates, and proportions. Then the third one is you must know the calculations that include percentage increase or percentage decrease. Percentage increase or percentage decrease. You must know the definition and the difference of interest and interest rate. So you must know the definition of interest and interest rate, and you must also know how to define them. You must be able to do the calculations that involve simple interest and compound interest. Calculations that involve simple and compound interest using a manual calculations. Remember, when we do calculations that involve simple and compound interest, we are not using a formula. So we must be able to do these calculations without the use of a formula. Determine the real cost of a loan and the interest rate paid on a loan. You must be able to determine or to calculate the real cost of a loan and the interest paid on a loan. You must also be able to determine the total amount of money in an investment at the end of a certain time period. So in other words, if money is being invested at a certain percentage and then for a certain period, you must be able to calculate the total amount of money at the end of that period. And you must also be able to make sense of graphs showing loan and investment scenarios. Okay, I've already indicated this. I'm just going to emphasize, distinguish between interest rate values and interest values. Investigate through calculations how interest values are calculated using interest rate values. Perform calculations involving simple and compound interest. And then investigate the different ways in which interest is calculated on different types of accounts. You must also be able to investigate changes in the prices of goods or services. You must be able to estimate the value of a currency in relation to another currency. You must be able to recognize the meaning of the terms strong and weak with regard to relationship between different currencies. In other words, if you are given an exchange rate and then they have to ask you which currency is stronger than the other one, or which currency is weaker than the other one, you must be able to tell, and you must be able to give the reason why you say this currency is stronger than the other currency, or this currency is weaker than the other currency. Okay, now these are some of the questions that were taken from the recent prelim question papers from various provinces. So the first question, this one was taken from Free State prelim paper 1. It was number 1. St. Dominic's College invested 1,250,000. St. Dominic's College invested 1,250,000 at a bank where it will earn an interest rate of 6% compounded annually. So compounded annually, it means we're going to use a compound interest. This is a compound interest for 2.25 of a year. For 2.25 of a year. Determine through calculations whether this money will generate an interest of more than 180,000 by the end of the investment. So remember, there is a difference between a simple interest and a compound interest. In this question, the question is about a compound interest. So what we're going to do is, the question is determined through whether this money will generate an interest of more than 180,000 by the end of the investment term. The investment term is 2.25 of a year. 2.25 of a year. And then a quarter of a year, we know that it's 3 months. So what we're going to do, we're first going to calculate the interest at the end of first year. So interest at the end of the first year, we're going to have 1,250,000 plus Now we have to check what is our interest rate. Our interest rate is 6%. So it's 6% per annum. So 6% per annum or compounded annually. So this one is going to be 6% of 1,250,000. 1,250,000. So it means at the end of the first year, the amount will be the very same 1,250,000 plus the interest. So for this one, we say 1,250,000 plus. Now we need to calculate 6%. 6% of 1,250,000. I know that some of you will prefer to indicate 6 over 10 and then you say times 1,250,000. Or some will say 6 over 10 and that 6 over 10 they change it to 0, 0.6 because 6 divided by 10 is 0, 0.6. But if I take my calculator here, I say 6% or I just say 6 over 100. So if I say 6 over 100 or 6 divided by 100 multiplied by 1,250,000, 1,250,000 multiplied by 6 over 100. This is what I'm getting. I'm getting 75,000. So this is 75,000. Okay, so 6% of 1,250,000, I get 75,000. So at the end of the first year, if I add these two values together, I say 1,250,000 plus 75,000. So I take that 75,000, I say 1,250,000. Okay, 1,250,000, and I get 1,325,000. Okay, so let me see, 75,000 plus 1,250,000. Okay, I get 1,325,000. Okay, so this will be the amount at the end of the first year. Okay, okay, first thing, okay, this one I said at the end, actually it must be at the end of first year, not necessarily the interest. At the end of this first year, the total amount. Total at the end of the first year. Total at the end of the first year will be 1,250,000 plus the interest. But how do I calculate the interest? The interest is 6% of 1,250,000. So this is the total amount already. It is actually the total amount, which is the 1,250,000 plus the interest. The interest only is 75,000. Now I go to the end of second year. Okay, at the end of second year, now I'm going to take the total amount at the end of the previous year, which is 1,325,000. Now, which percentage am I going to use? I'm still going to use 6%. So 6% of, now it's 6% of 1,325,000. 1,325,000. Okay, then I can do the calculation. I still have 1,325,000 plus. Now I have to calculate 6% of this. 6% of 1,325,000. So 1,325,000. Okay, 1,325,000 times 6 divided by 100. Then I get 795 00. So it's 79,500. So it's 1,325,000 plus 79,500. So then I add them together. then this will give me it's 1,404,000. 1,404,500. Okay, so now this is the end of the second year. Now I have to go to the end of the third year. Now, do I have the third year? Here I've got 2.25 of a year. I've got the end of the first year, the end of the second year, but when I get to the third year, it's only 3 months. So 3 months is not the whole year. 3 months is a quarter of a year. So it means this 6%, we know that the 6% is for the whole year. But now we need to change this 6% to a quarter of a year. So the 6% will now become, okay, the 6% will now become, I'm going to indicate the 6%, I'm now going to take 6% divided by 4. 6% per quarter. Okay, or let me just say 6% divided by 4. So for that 3 months, I say 6 divided by 4, then it's 1.5. So it's 1.5% for a quarter of a year. Remember, it's 6% for the whole year. But for 3 months, I have to divide it by 4 because it's a quarter of a year. So the last one, I'm going to say 1,404,500 and then plus 1.5% of 1,250,000. No, 1,404,000. 404,500. Sorry, I'm running out of space there. So it's 1,404,500 plus 1.5%. Then from there, I'm going to say this is equals to 1,404,500 plus. Now I have to calculate 1.5%. 1.5% of 1.5%, I say 1.5 divided by 100 multiplied by 1,404,500. Okay, so you can see I've indicated extra 0 there. So this will give me 21,067.5. Okay, so I've got 1,404,500 plus 21,067.50. So now I can just get the total. I'm going to indicate the total here. Then it's plus 1. So 21,067.5 plus 1,404,500. Okay, so in the end I get I get 1,425,567.50. Okay, so this is the total. Okay, then, but now they want to know, determine through calculation whether this money will generate an interest of more than. So the interest, I must now calculate the difference. The interest will be 1,425,567.50, and then I subtract the invested amount, which is 1,250,000. Okay, so if I calculate the difference there, I say 1,425,567.50 minus 1,250,000. So I'm getting 175,567 and 50 cents. So this will be the interest. So I had to calculate the total amount at the end of the period, and then after that I have to calculate I have to calculate the difference between the total amount and the invested amount. So the difference here is 175,567 rand and 50 cents. Then the question is determined through the calculation whether the money will generate an interest of more than. So you can see that 175,000, it's not more than. So it will only generate less than 180,000. So it generates less than 180,000. And remember, that statement is very, very important. After you have done your final calculations, you must indicate in the end, because here they say determine through calculations whether this money will generate an interest of more than 180,000. After doing the calculations, you can see that you get 175,567.50 cents. Then now you can say now it will not generate more than 180,000, but it will generate less than 180,000. Okay, so that was number one. Then number two, this one was taken from GP Prelim Paper 1. Okay, question 2, it was taken from Prelim GP Paper 1. So before I continue with this one, boys and girls, I'm going to take 1 minute break and then I'll get back to you. Okay, welcome back, boys and girls. Let us continue question 2. This one was taken from Gauteng Province Prelim Paper 1. TD received an order from the local church to produce 250 traditional bells. She borrowed 60,000 from a local bank at an interest rate of 12% per annum, compounded annually. Determine the total amount that she will pay if she repays the loan in 1 year, 6 months. So you saw that the previous one was 2.25 of a year. So 2.25 of a year, but this one is 1 year and 6 months. 1 year and 6 months is the same as 1.5 years. Okay, so we're going to say total amount, total, I'll just say total at the end of first year. At the end of first year. Okay, so the amount will be 60,000. 60,000 plus 12% of 60,000 rent. Okay, then I can just calculate it. 12% of 60,000. 7,200. So this one will be 60,000 plus, when I calculate 12% of this, I get 7,200. Okay, and then in the end, it's 67,200. Okay, so that is at the end of the first year. Then the second year, it's now 6 months. It's only half of a year. It's not the whole year. So it means for second year, we know that it's only half of a year. So it's half of a year. This is how we calculate it. First thing, the interest rate will be 12%. divided by 2. Then we are going to use 6% because it's only 6 months. So 6 months is the same as half of a year. So we take the whole year's interest rate, we divide it by 2. Okay, then now we can say the amount will be 67,000 plus 6% of 67,200, which is equals to 67,000 plus, when I calculate 6% of this amount, 6% of 67,200, I say 6 times 67,200 divided by 100. Then I get 4,032. And in the end is 67,000 wait, let me check. So this must be 67,200. Sorry, this must also be 67,200, not just, so it must be 67,200. 67,200. Sorry about that. Then I'll say 67,200 plus 4,032. And then the end I get 71,232. Okay, so remember we must add interest on interest. So it's 67,200. Then plus 6% of 67,200. Then in the end, I get 67,200 plus 4,032. How did I get 4,032? It's when I calculated, I said 6 over 100 multiplied by 67,200. And then I got 71,232. Let me just confirm it as 6 over 100 multiplied by 67,200. And then it's 4,032. So this is the total amount at the end of the second year. So the question is, determine the total amount she will repay if she repays the loan in 1 year and 6 months. So it means she's going to repay 71,232. 71,000. Okay, 71,232. Okay, so that is number 2.1. Then number 2.2, hence determine the amount of interest she will repay. The moment you see the word hence, it means you must use the answer from the previous question, or you must use the information from the previous question. Hence, determine the amount of interest she will pay. So if we look at the previous question, we said the total amount that she's going to repay is 71,232. 71,232. Okay, 71,232. That is the total amount. Now we have to calculate the interest. So it means the interest is the difference between the amount, the total amount she will pay, which is 71,232, and the borrowed amount. So 71,232 rand minus 60,000. So 71,232 minus 60,000. And then the answer is 11,232. 11,232. That is the answer for number 2.2. Then question 3, which was also taken from Gauteng Province Prelim Paper 1. Pule ordered more motorbikes from India and paid 3,000 Indian rupees for shipping. The cost of each motorbike is 12,000 Indian rupees. Okay. Then they've indicated the exchange rate. They say 1 Indian rupee, okay, it's equals to 0.21 South African rand. Okay, 1 Indian rupee is equals to 0.21 South African rand. Then if you analyze this exchange rate, you can see that you've got 1 and you've got 0.21. Now, between 1 and 0.21, which one is smaller? So 0.21 is smaller. So it means if you bring 1 Indian rupee to South Africa, you're going to get less number of rands. Okay, so in other words, if you, let's say for instance, if you bring million rupees, you're not going to get you're no longer going to get million in terms of South African rands, but you're going to get less than a million. So for this one is 3.1 is which currency is stronger between South African rand and the Indian rupee. So if somebody from India will bring a lot of rupees to South Africa, then they have to exchange. That person will get less number of South African rands. So it means that money, when it comes to South Africa, it actually becomes less. So in this case, we say which currency is stronger between South African rand and Indian rupee. South African rand is stronger. South African rand is it's stronger. Then so in this case, it's the South African rand is actually stronger than the Indian rupee because you get less number of rands when you bring the number of rupees. Okay, less you get less number of rands you get less number of rands when you change rupees to rands. Okay, right, then number 3.2 is Pule ordered more motorbikes from India and paid 300,000 Indian rupees for shipping. The cost of each motorbike is 12,000 Indian rupees. 3.2, will 30,000 be enough to buy 12 motorbikes and pay for shipping? Okay, will 30,000 rand be enough to buy 12 motorbikes and pay for shipping? Show all calculations. Then it means now what we need to do, we need to convert the number of rupees to rands. Okay, first thing, we must calculate the cost of shipping in rands. So shipping, let us look at this one. We said 1 INR, it's equal to 0.21 ZAR. Okay, the very same way you do with conversion. In this case, we've got 3,000 INR. In other words, we've got 3,000 Indian rupees. Now we want to convert it to rands. Okay, then what are we going to do in this case? We're going to cross multiply. So this one, I'm looking for the amount. Okay, I can just say A for the amount, then I cross multiply. If I cross multiply, the value of A will be equal to 3,000 multiplied by 0.21. 3,000 multiplied by 0.21. Cross multiplication and then cross multiplication. A equals to 3,000 times 0.21. Then I say 3,000 multiplied by 0.21, that's 630. So this will be 630. So I can say for shipping, it's going to be 630 rand. Okay, then the next one is the cost of each motorbike is 12,000 Indian rupees. Now, let me take this 12,000 and also convert it to rands. The same procedure, 1 INR is equals to 0.21 South African rand. Then now I've got 12,000 INR. Then I want to know the amount. Okay, so the amount I have to cross multiply. So in this case, for cost of one bike, cost of one bike will be 12,000 multiplied by 0.21. So 12,000 multiplied by 0.21, then I get 2,520. So cost of one bike is 2,520 in rands. Okay, so now I say, what about the cost of 12 bikes? Cost of 12 motorbikes. Then I say 2,520 multiplied by, they say, for how many motorbikes? 12. So 2,520 multiplied by 12, then this will give me 30,340. 30,240. Okay, the cost of shipping is 630 rand, and the cost of 12 motorbikes is 30,240. So therefore, the total cost it's 630 rand plus 30,240. 30,240 plus 630, then I get 30,870. 30,870. Okay, let's go back to our question. They say, will 30,000 be enough to buy 12 motorbikes and pay for shipping? Then in this case, when we do the conversion, we can see that actually the cost is 30,870 rand. Is this enough? So 30,000 will not be enough. So this one, you can say 30,000 will not be enough. There's going to be a shortage of 870 rand. Not enough. This statement is very important. Not enough. There will be a shortage of 870 rand. Okay, it's very important that after doing the calculations, since the question wanted to know if the 30,000 will be enough, and then in the end, after doing the calculations, you can see that you're actually going to need 30,870. So it's not going to be enough. There's going to be a shortfall of 870 rand. Right, then the next question. This one was taken from KZN Prelim Paper 1. A local rugby team is planning a tour to 4 countries: the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, and Ireland. Alongside is a summary of exchange rates for these countries. Use the table and the information alongside to answer the questions that follow. 4.1, identify the country in the table where the exchange rate is given as a rand per unit. Okay, so it's rand per unit. Rand per unit. So they want to know the given amount is the number of rands against that currency. So if you look at this, you can see that they say US dollar, the bank will buy it with 0.0571. Okay, we know that South African rand is actually weaker than all these currencies that are indicated here. US, okay, so it means if I convert from US to South African rand, I'm going to get more rent, okay? Or if I convert the South African rand, okay, to US dollars, I'm going to get less number of US dollars. I'm going to get, in other words, if I count the number of US dollars, I'm going to get, if in South Africa I get 10 rands and then I convert it to US dollars, I'm going to get less number of US dollars. The same thing with British pound. If I've got South African rands, if I've got 100 rand, I've got 100 of rands and then I convert it to British pound, I'm going to get less number of British pound. The same thing with euro, I'm going to get less number of euros. And then if you look at the US dollar, they say US dollar is 11,061 rands. Okay, so this one, it means AUSD. Okay, 1 US dollar is equals to 11.0619 rands. So this means South African rand against 1 Australian dollar. South African rand against 1 US dollar. 11,0619 will give you 1 Australian dollar. Will give you only 1 Australian dollar. So identify the country in the table where the exchange rate is given as rand per unit of foreign currency, that is AUSD, Australian dollar. That is the answer for number 4.1. Okay, then the next one is using the bank buy rate to calculate the value of one pound, 1 British pound in rands. Express your answer in the form 1 British pound is equals to how many rands? Now, if you look at the information that is given there, we've got the following, that 1 British pound, okay, so this one we've got 1 British pound, it's equals to, okay, so we've got 1 South African rand, so this must actually be 1 South African, or 0,0425, okay, of US dollar, of British pound is equals to 1 rand. Okay, so this is equals to 1 rand, or you can just say, let's put it on this side, 1 rand. This 0,0425 of British pound, it's equals to 1 rand. 0,0425. So in this case, in order to get 1 there, we have to divide by 0,0425, and I also divide by 0,0425, so that I can be left with 1 there. So this will be British pound, which is 1, because 0,0425 divided by 0,0425 will give me 1. On the other side, I'm going to have 1 divided by 0.0425. Then I get 23,529,41176. Okay, so now you can see in this case they say use the bank buy rate, calculate the value of 1 British pound in rands. So in this case, they have indicated that 0,0425 rands, okay, I'm sorry, 0,0425 British pound will give you 1 rand. So that is why I said 0,0425 is equals to 1 rand. And then after that, I want to be left with 1 on the left hand side. So in order for me to be left with 1, I have to divide by the very same number. I divide by 0,0425, but when I divide by 0,025, I'm 0,0425 on the left hand side. I must also divide by the very same 0,0425 on the right hand side. Then in the end, I get 23,529,41176. The examiner doesn't indicate the rounding. So if you want to round it off, you can round it off to 2 decimal places. So that will be 23,53, 23 rand and 53 cents. But the rounding does not matter in this case. Just make sure that when you round off correctly. Okay, then number 4.3, it's a rugby player plans to exchange 25,000 rand for euros. Identify the exchange rate the bank will apply and calculate the amount of euros he will receive. Okay, a rugby player plans to exchange 25,000 rand for euros. Identify the exchange rate the bank will apply. Remember, the rugby player is now going to sell the 25,000. So it means they have to buy. Okay, they will have to buy. So if they have to buy the 25,000, so they are going to use which currency is euro, so which is 0,0507, 0,057. Identify the exchange rate the bank will apply and calculate the amount of euros he will receive. So for this one, it's going to be okay, we've got the following. We know that 0.0507 okay, euros. Okay, euros, it's equals to 100. Okay, that is the exchange rate that is given there. 0,0507, it's equals to 100. But in this case, we've got 25,000. Now we want to exchange this 25,000 rand. Now the 25,000 rand will become how much? So this one, I want to know the amount. Then I can just cross multiply. If I cross multiply the amount multiplied by 1, I still get the amount. Then will be 25,000 multiplied by 0.0507. Okay, I multiply by the exchange rate. So this will be 25,000 multiplied by 0.0507. Okay, then I get 1,267.5. Okay, so the amount is, it's in euros, 1,265.50 euros. Okay, so the exchange rate is 0,0507. That is how we identify and calculate the amount of euros he will receive. So he will receive 1,267.50 euros. Remember, there are two questions there we had to identify. We have identified 0,0507 and we have used that 0,0507, 0,0507 to calculate the amount of euros. Okay, then number 4.4, still on the very same question. At the end of the tour, a rugby player has 27 Australian dollars, AUD, and 105 USD, that is US dollars, to convert to rands. Calculate the total amount he will receive in rands. Okay. At the end of the tour, a rugby player has 27 Australian dollars and 105 US dollars to convert to rands. Calculate the total amount he will receive. So we have to start with 27 Australian dollars that we need to convert. We need to convert it to rands. Okay, but for Australian dollars, we know that 1 Australian dollar, it's equals to 11,0619. 1 Australian dollar, it's equals to 11,0619. So how do we convert this? we say now we've got 27 Australian dollars. Now we must convert it to rands. We must convert it to that amount. So what are we going to do? We say the 27 now will become 27 multiplied by 11.0619, which is equals to, if you take our calculator, 27 multiplied by 11.0619, it's 298. So this is now rands, 298,6713. 6713. Sorry, we don't round it off. It must be 13. So if we convert the 27 Australian dollars, we convert it to rands, we get 298 rand and 67 cents. Okay, but we don't round it off because it's not the final answer. Now let's go to 105 US dollars. What do we have there? We know the following: 0,0571 US dollars, USD. It's equals to 1 rand. Okay, but in this case, I've got 105 USD, 105 US dollars. Now I want to convert it to rands. Okay, now I don't know how many rands is this. I can just indicate this is an amount in rands. I use capital letter A for the amount in rands. Then I cross multiply. When I cross multiply, okay, let us just ignore the units. Then I say A multiplied by that one, I get 0,0571A equals to 105 multiplied by 1, I still get 105. Okay, then I'm looking for the value of A. I divide by 0,0571, divide by 0,0571. Okay, this one is cancelled out. A is equals to, so if I take 105, I divide it by 0. 105 divided by 0.0571. Okay, then I get 1838. 1838, comma 879159. Then I can just add them together. Then I'll take this amount and then I add it with them. If I add them together, for the sake of the space, I'll say the total amount is equals to 1,838,87915 plus 298,6713. So I just add them together. So this one I will just say plus 298,6713. Then I get 2,000. Okay, 2,137 rand and 55 cents. I can now round it off. So in the end, the total amount is 2,137 rand and 55 cents. So what I had to do in this case, I was given the amount with two different currencies. Okay, then I had to convert the amount of each currency to rands. So I converted 27 rand, okay, to rands. I got 298 rand and 67 cents, and then I converted the 105 US dollars, and then I got 1,838. Then after that, I add them together to get the total amount. So the total amount is 2,137 rand and 55 cents. Okay, then the next question. It's Mpo wants to buy a new house in Johannesburg. He has 1 million in savings for the purchase of a new house but does not have the full cash amount. Property 24 has the details on 3 bond payment options for a house on sale in Johannesburg as shown in table alongside. Write the table to answer the following questions. Okay, the information is given in the table. The number 5.1 is write down the term agreement in months for bond payment option 1. So this is option 1. Then we can see the term agreement is 10 years. We just need to convert the 10 years to months. So we say 10 multiplied by 12, and then we get 120 months. Okay, so we just convert the number of years. There are 12 months in a year. So we just take 10, we multiply by 12, we get 120 months. Then the next question, still on the very same information, convert 10.75% per year, 10.75% per year interest rate to a rate per month to 1 decimal place. So we change this from per year to per month. So we take 10.75%. We must now divide it by 12. And then if I take my calculator, say 10.75 divided by 12, I'm getting 0, 0.8 8958 33 and so on and so on. So remember, this is a percentage. Okay, 0.0895833. It's a percentage. Then the question is to 1 decimal place. Now to 1 decimal place will be 0.9. If you round it up to 1 decimal place, you look at the first digit. The first digit, the digit next to it, if it's more than 5, this will change to 9. If this number was less than 5, this was going to remain as 8. But in this case, because the number next to it is 5 or more, then this changes to the higher number. So we get 0.9% per month. You can just indicate per month. Okay, then 5.3, it's calculate the total cost of the house if he decides to use bond payment option 1. The monthly installments remain the same throughout the contract period. You may use the following formula. The total value of monthly installments, plus once-off costs. Okay, plus once-off cost. So in this case, calculate the total cost of the house if he decides to use bond payment option 1. The monthly installments remain the same throughout the contract period. You may use the following formula. Total cost is equal to the total value of monthly installment plus once-off cost. So in this case, it's 68,000. That is the monthly installment. According to the formula, is the total value of monthly installments plus once-off cost. Once-off cost is 1,600,015 rand. So we can just do the substitution here. I'm going to take 68,033 rand. I multiply by the number of years. Sorry, I multiply by the number of months. The number of months I've already calculated, or you can just say 10 times 12, or you can just say 120. And then we say plus once-off cost. The once-off cost is 1,600,015. Okay, then when I do the calculation, it's 68,033. I multiply by 120. Remember, you can still say times 10 times 12, or you can just say times 120. So in this case, I get I get 8 million. So it's 8,639,000. Okay. So this one is 8 million. So it must be 8,163,960. And then I still have to add it with 1,600,015. Then in the end, the answer will be, if I take 8,163,960, then I add it with 1,600,015. 600,015. Okay, so it's 8,163,960 plus 1,600,015. Then in the end, I get 9,639,975. Okay, 9,639,975. Remember, this one it's according to the formula, and remember it's excluding the deposit. Okay, so because the formula is indicated the total value of monthly installment plus once-off cost. Okay, so for this one to be on the safe side, we can also say plus the deposit, which is 1 million, or the total cost plus 1 million. This will give us 10,639,975. Okay, so that will be the answer of number 5.3. That is question 5. Then that was 5.3. Then 5.4. It's Lerato claims that the percentage more than the purchase price Paul will be paying if he decides to use bond payment option 1 is less than 60% of the cash price. Okay, Lerato claims that the percentage more than purchase price Paul will be paying if he decides to use bond payment option 1 less than that of the cash price. This, okay, Lerato claims that the percentage, let me check. Okay, let me read the question again. Paul wants to buy a new house in Johannesburg. He has 1 million in savings for the purchase of a new house, but does not have full cash amount. Property 24 has the details on 3 bond payment options for a household sale in Johannesburg as shown in table alongside. Use the table to answer the questions. The following questions. Lerato claims that the percentage more than the purchase price will be paying, that Paul will be paying if he decides to use bond payment option, it's less than 60% of the cash price. So it means what percentage it's Paul going to pay in total compared to the cash price. So it means in this case, we said the total amount that Paul is going to pay in the previous question, it's 10,639,975. 10,639,000. Okay. Okay, just want to check the previous one. Sorry about that. I just want to go back to the question. Okay, For that one, I said is 10,639,975, 975,000. Okay, so that is the total amount. So this one, they say, if you decide to use bond payment option 1, less than 60% of the cash price. So for this, we must check if the 10,639,975, we divided by the cash price, which is 5,990,000, and we times it by 100%, and then it's going to pay how much? So 10,639,975 divided by 5,990,000. This times 100. Okay, so it's 10,639,975 divided by 5,990,000. Times it by 100, so it's 177%. So 177%, it's actually not less than, but it's more than 60%, because this means it's 100% plus 77%. So it's actually more than 70%, not less than 60%. Okay, then number 5.5 is to relocate to the new house. Mpo takes out a loan of 350,000 from his father at an interest rate of 17% per year, compound interest. He will pay back the full amount after 3 years. Calculate rounded to the nearest 100 rand, the amount he pays back. Okay, so this one we're going to calculate the interest again. So we're going to say end of first year is going to be 350,000 plus 17%, 17% of 350,000. You can see, boys and girls, we've already done 2 of these type of questions. So this will give us, I'm just going to write down the answer. So 17% of 350,000, 17 divided by 100, multiplied by 350,000, 350,000. This will give me 59,500. If I calculate this, it gives me 59,500. So let me just write it down, 59,500. And then it's 350,000. Okay, so plus 350,000. Then it's 409,000. 409,500. Okay, this will be at the end of the first year. And then second year, so we say second year is still 409,500 plus 17% of 409,500. Then when I calculate that, I say 409,500. Then I calculate 17%, 17 divided by 100, multiplied by 409,500. Then I get this part is 69,615. And then I get 409,500. Then when I add them together, 409,500, 409,500, then I get 479,115. So this will be the end of the second year. And then at the end of the third year, I'm going to write it here. Third year, it's 479,115 plus 17% of the very same amount, 479,115. Then I calculate the 17%. 17% will give me, okay, so this will be 479,115 plus 81,449.55 and 55 cents. So it's plus 479,115, and then in the end I get 560,000. 560,564. Okay, 564. Okay, so this is the answer. Let's check the question again. To relocate to a new house, Mpo takes out a loan of 350,000 from his father at an interest of 17% per year compounded interest. He will pay back the full amount after 3 years. Calculate rounded to the nearest 100. Okay, here we've got the amount, which is 560,564. Now they say to the nearest 100. To the nearest 100, we now have to look at that 564 rand. That number must be divisible by 100. So for this number to be divisible by 100, it means it is between 500 and 600. That 564, we know that is between 500 and 600. Okay, but if we check, is it more close to 500 or more close to 600? So you can see that in this case, it's more close to 600 than 500. So when we round it off, it means it's going to be 560,000 and then 600. That is how we round it off to the nearest 100. So that is number 5.5. Okay, then number 5.6, Mpo stated that the difference between the total monthly installments of bond payment option 2 and option 3 is less than 2 million. Mpo stated that the difference between the total monthly installments of bond payment option 2 and option 3 is less than 2 million. So we're going to look at the monthly installments, So the monthly installments in this case for option 2, okay, option 2, we say the total monthly installments for option 2, it must be 55,935 multiplied by 12 and multiplied by 15. Or you can say multiply by 12, multiply by 15. So the monthly installment, which is this one, 55,935, we multiply by the number of months and we multiply by the number of years. So this will give me 55,935 multiplied by 12 multiplied by 15. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I get 10,068,300. That is for option number 2. And then option 3, we've got 50,000. 50,659 multiplied by 12 multiplied by the number of years there is 20. So the installment is 50,659 per month. Then we multiply by the number of months, we multiply by the number of years. So I'll say 50,659 multiplied by 12 multiplied by 20. So this will give me it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's 12,158,160. So that is option 3. But the question is, Mpo stated that the difference between the total monthly installments of bond payment option 2 and option 3 is less than 2 million. So now we have to calculate the difference. Now we know that in Betlit, when we calculate difference, it's when we take the big value, which is 12,158,160 in this case. We subtract the small value, which is 10,068,300. Okay, so I'm just calculating the difference. 12,158,160 minus 10,068,300. And then I get 2,089,860. So it's 2,089,860. Mpo stated that the difference between the monthly installments of bond payment option 2 and option 3 is less than 2 million. Verify if his statement is valid. So the statement is invalid, because we can see that it is more than 2 million. The difference is more than 2 million. Okay, then the next question is question 6, taken from Limpopo Prelim Paper 1. Mr. Gareth plans to travel to Botswana and Algeria for the holidays with his son. He has 0.4 million in 0.4 million rand in savings for the holidays. The table alongside shows the exchange rate on 18 February 2023. Use the table to answer the questions that follow. 6.1, write down the exchange rate between Botswana and the South African rand. Okay, so the exchange rate between Botswana and the South African rand, you can say 1 South African rand, it's equals to 1,377,864,0,627 of Botswana Pula, BWP. Okay, 1 South African rand. Okay, 1 South African rand. Actually, it must be other way around. It must be 1 Botswana Pula it's equals to 1,377,864,0,627 of South African rand. Okay, so that is number 6.1. Right, then number 6.2, which one of the currencies is stronger than the South African rand? So if we look at this one, you can see that in this case, if you take South African rand, okay, if you compare South African rand with Botswana Pula, okay, if this one is currency, Botswana Pula, units per South African rand. So if you take Botswana Pula, then you bring it to South Africa, this is 1, and then you can see the 1 changes to less than 1. It changes to 0.725. Okay, the 1 changes to 0.725. So it means if somebody from Botswana brings a lot of Botswana Pula to South Africa, that person will get less number of rands. So it means their currency is actually stronger than the South African rand. So in this case, they say which one of the currency is stronger than the South African rand? So that is Botswana Pula, BWP. Botswana Pula is stronger than the South African rand. Okay, but if you have somebody from Algeria, okay, the Algerian dinar, so you will see that in this case, if they've got 1, if they bring the Algerian dinar, they will get more rands. They will get more rands. It means their currency is actually weaker because they're going to get more of this. Okay, so that is the BWP. So BWP is the stronger than the South African rand. Okay, then we've got Mr. Gareth wants to use 40% of his savings to travel to Algeria. Determine the Algerian dinar value of 40% of his savings if he wants to travel to Algeria. Okay, Mr. Gareth wants to use 40% of his savings. So it means in this case, we know that 0.4 million. To make it easier for us, we can just convert it to an ordinary number. So this one 0.4 million, we can say 0.4 multiplied by 1 million, and this will give us 400,000. So 400,000. So 0.4 million is the same as 400,000 rand. Okay, then we calculate 40%. So 40%, so it's 40 over 100. We know that 40% is the same as 40 over 100. So 40%, and we multiply by 400,000. So if you calculate 40% of that amount is 40 over 100 multiplied by 400,000. And then I get 160,000. So it's 160,000 rand. Okay, so we have calculated 40%. Right. So this one, they say Mr. Gareth wants to use 40% of his savings to travel to Algeria. Determine the Algerian dinar value of 40% of his savings if he wants to travel to Algeria. So it means now we need to take this amount and convert it to Algerian dinar. So for this one, it means if I want to convert, I'll say 1 South African rand. 1 South African rand is equals to 7 or DZD 7,48593. Okay, so it means for every South African rand, I need to multiply it by 7,48539. You see that when you do a cross multiplication, then now we need to convert this 160,000 rand. So it's 160,000 South African rand. Now we want to convert it to what is that? DZD. That is the Algerian dinar. So when I do the conversion, I just multiply. So I'll take 160,000. I multiply by 7,48593. So I take that amount, 160,000, 160,000. There's 160,000. I multiply by 7,48593 equals to. Then the answer is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I get 1,197,748.8. So that is the Algerian DZD. So the answer is 1,197,748.80. You can just indicate 80. Okay, so this is the answer for. So we first need to convert this to an ordinary number, which is 400,000, and then we calculate 40%, and then 40% we got 160,000, then 160,000 rands. Then that 160,000 rand we convert it to the Algerian currency. Okay, as indicated, right? So that was number 6.3. And then boys and girls, unfortunately, I can see that time is not on my side. So I can only do the questions up until number 6.3. Actually, we're supposed to do more questions, but unfortunately, time is not on our side. So please make sure that you revise this type of questions. Remember, in this case, it's interest Okay, it's loans, it's banking and loans, exchange rate, and inflation as well. There was another question about inflation, but unfortunately we couldn't get to that question because of time. And then thank you very much for watching this lesson, and good luck with your examination. I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.